Start out that way. If you were talking about society in the 1830s in New Orleans, you would know the name Delphine LaLaurie. Delphine came from one of the richest families in the city of New Orleans. If you've explored uptown on our streetcar line, you've gotten all the way to Carrollton, where the St. Charles streetcar makes a turn away from the river. That entire area of the city was their family's plantation. They were extremely wealthy people. They were the McCarty family. It doesn't sound very French. It's not. It's actually a family of Irish people who had moved here, been very successful here, had become Creole over the years. Delphine, the youngest daughter of the family, certainly the most popular one of the family. She was said to be incredibly beautiful. She was said to have scarlet red hair. She wore long her entire life. She was said to have a temper that matched that scarlet red hair, though. She got into her first marriage at the age of 14 years old. She would marry a Spanish businessman, extremely wealthy man, who by the time she was 20 was having a very hard time here in the city of New Orleans. They'd been married about 5.5 years. His fortunes were not going well here. He decided that he was going to take over of his family's holdings in South America. Well, you have to know, for a young Creole girl brought up in society in New Orleans, the idea of moving away from New Orleans all the way to South America was not something that Delphine had any interest in doing. She begged and pleaded with the husband. They were said to get into horrible fights over the issue. Finally, she agreed that indeed she would take that trip away from New Orleans. Well, they made their plans, but it would be cut short. They never actually would make that trip. The husband came down with a mysterious illness just weeks before they were due to leave the city of New Orleans. No doctor could seem to find the cause nor the cure for that disease, and the husband wasted away and died before the family ever made the trip. Young Delphine LaLaurie, age 20, inherits not only the money that she has from her family, but also her first husband's vast wealth. Well, for years afterwards, she's the society girl. She's the married widow. Eventually, she will agree to marry a second man. This one, a very well-off American businessman. It's now the American period in Louisiana. Lots of money is being made, but you know what? Even more money is being made out west. It's the gold rush. He wants to go west. He wants to start a chain of stores supplying that gold rush, gold fever. But again, of course, it's going to mean that Delphine is going to have to leave the city that she loves so much, where she really is the queen bee of society at the time. And wouldn't you know it, just like that first husband, that second husband will come down with a mysterious illness and waste away. No doctor can seem to find the cause or the cure for it. And he will die, leaving her a vast fortune. Now, I'm not going to tell you that Delphine was a black widow. I'm just saying, if she offers you her special gumbo recipe, skip it, okay? Delphine will again go for years without being married. Still the happy widow in New Orleans. Vast wealth, 3 different families providing it. And in the year that she turns 52, she's going to meet her third husband. Third husband, Louis LaLaurie. Louis is on a trip around the world. He's celebrating. He's just graduated from medical school in Toulouse, France, where his family has their holdings. He too comes from a wealthy family, and when he's visiting those distant cousins here in New Orleans, he will find that he is attracted to this magnificent, worldly, fancy, older woman that he's met. He's only 25 years old. He'll wine her, he'll dine her, and Delphine at 52 scores a doctor. How about that, go Delphine? Yes. Well, it's a little bit scandalous. It's kind of a spring-fall romance. But they are the it people in town. They'll have this building built here at what is then the edge of the French Quarter. It's one of the biggest structures built. It's beautiful, 3 stories to all of their specifications. And once they move in, they will start having some of the grandest parties in the city of New Orleans. Now, you think about the carnival season, the carnival balls as being modern-day sort of social season. In New Orleans in those days, in Creole society, it's a year-long affair. It's all about what parties you're going to, how you're dressing, who you're associating with. And the LaLauries have the best parties. Through all of Delphine's family connections, she's always going to have the best and the brightest, the most powerful, the richest people in the city of New Orleans. Everyone wants to be here. She's spending a huge amount of money on these parties. People would say she's spending about $500 a week in the 1830s on just the booze for those parties. That's about $8,000 translated for inflation. And she's having these parties every week in her home. Everybody wants to be on the guest list. But there are going to be some peculiarities about Miss Delphine that people will talk about behind their hands. For one thing, they find that LaLauries are terribly, terribly ostentatious. Yes, they have a large number of very well-dressed slaves. In fact, people coming to parties will often say that they find that they're not dressed as well as the slaves who are dressed in the latest French fashions. They will notice that there's an awful lot of them, too. It seems like the LaLauries really go over the top. People who were very wealthy in those slave-owning days might have as many as 5 slaves in a house this size. It was only the 2 of them. The LaLauries commonly have between 12 and 20 slaves at any one time on the premises. That's enough to run a plantation, people. It's a lot of people. But that's not the thing that will really get people, and maybe the LaLauries would have been better off dressing those slaves a little less well, because people will notice it seems like they go through a lot of slaves also. There's a lot of changeover here at the house. The man who's taking care of your horses or carriages the last time you arrived isn't doing it the next time you're there. It's a different man. It's a different man serving you drinks or bringing the food out. It's all very mysterious. But people do learn that the LaLauries, as much as they like throwing parties, as much as they like having good gossip go around about them, really hate it when anybody mentions anything about their slaves. It's a good way that if it gets back to their ears that you've been discussing this mystery to find that you aren't welcome there the next time you arrive at the party. Well, the mystery of the changing slaves will be solved when there is a fire at one of their parties. It's 1834. It's April of that year, when in the slave quarters in the kitchen behind the main house, a fire will break out. It's a huge smoky fire, and it starts coming all through the house on the 2nd floor and 3rd floor where the parties are going on. The guests will attempt to exit that building. They certainly don't want to be in a burning building, no matter how pretty it is. They will be stopped at the front door by Delphine herself. She will refuse to let her party guests leave. She's not going to have her wonderful furniture and artwork and all of her imported goods ruined by smoke and fire. She forces those people up the stairs to start bringing all of those goodies out into the street. They'll bring them out here, and as an award, or reward as the case may be, she's going to keep the party going as they wait for the fire brigades to arrive. She'll have the band that's playing at the party set up at the intersection. She'll have the food and the booze brought down. The party will continue, and indeed, soon the fire brigades do begin to arrive. They will break in through the courtyard. They will force their way into the kitchen. And once they get inside, they discover that actually the fire is not as terrible as they thought. There's a lot of smoke. It seems to have started in the stove in the kitchen. As they're going about putting this fire out, they're going to discover an old slave woman who's chained to the stove in the kitchen with just enough length of chain to move around the kitchen and nowhere else. Now, this old woman, she looks like she's been beaten, like she's been very abused, like she really hasn't been fed very well this entire time. She's passed out from all of the smoke in the kitchen. They'll break that chain on her ankle and pull her out into the street and revive her. Now, this has already shocked these firefighters. What are these people doing with this very abused-looking woman in the house? More than that, though, why is she chained to the stove? That was something that would have been even over the top, even in a slave-owning society like New Orleans in those days. When they revive her, they ask her what has happened. She is going to tell them that she's the one who set the fire in the stove, that she did it on purpose. Well, of course, this is strange. She's chained to the stove. Why is she setting a fire in the kitchen if she's chained to the stove? She'll tell them she'd rather die in a fire than spend one more day in the house with the LaLauries. She tells them that they're evil people, that they're not what they seem, that really they're the devil in human flesh. Well, the firefighters realize, slaves don't like their slave masters, but that's kind of extreme. She'll even have told them that she was trying to kill the LaLauries. She hoped that the fire got them as well. She'll be in tears when she finds out that, in fact, she's missed with her assassination attempt. When they ask for more details, though, what exactly has happened here, she won't tell them exactly. She'll simply start directing them to the slave quarters above the kitchen. She'll tell them to go to the slave quarters, not just look in the slave quarters themselves, but go to the back of the slave quarters, find the door there. She keeps referring to this mysterious door. Well, eventually it's enough to pique the curiosity of the firefighters. 6 of them will break off inside. They'll go upstairs into the slave quarters and indeed find a strange door where none really should be. At the back of the slave quarters, it's locked shut. They'll use those pry bars and axes to break their way into it. And what they